Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. Today we will be seeing about the organization of apparel business and the structure of a clothing factory. Indian textile industry is known globally for its products and it is the second largest producer and exporter of textiles and garments, China being the first in the world market. Indian market accounts for about 14% of the world production of textile fibers and yarn. It has a vast variety of textile production which includes cotton, jute, handicraft silk, hosiery and wool, and India is first in jute production, second largest producer of silk, cotton, man-made fiber, and filament, and third in cellulosic fiber in the world. The textile industry occupies an important place in the Indian economy too. It has a wide spectrum of industries extending from the organized large and medium scale units to small scale units which constitute an important segment of the economy. It has a unique position as a self-reliant industry from the production of raw materials to the delivery of finished products with substantial value addition at each stage of processing. The textile and clothing industry is a major contributor in the gross domestic product, employment and export of the economy. This sector contributes 4% to the GDP of India. It is one of the major contributors to the total output of the fast-growing Indian industrial sector with 14% share of the total industrial production. This sector plays an important role in terms of employment generation after agriculture. In every clothing factory, the first stage is fashion forecasting and sketching ideas in the design development process. The next stage is the development of the sample garment, which involves collection planning, pattern making, trading, and production of sample garments and costing of garments based on the working sketches. The line or the products are then appraised for production. The pattern adopted for the production requirements for handling these tasks. There are some specific departments in the clothing factory. Next is the principle of management. So management, according to one of the most common definitions, is the accomplishment of desired objectives, establishing an environment favorable to performance by people operating in organized groups. According to Henry Feo, there are 14 principles of management, which are listed here. So the first one is division of work. Division of work allows for job specialization. Work should be divided among individuals and groups. Next is authority and responsibility. According to authority and responsibility, right to give orders will be given here. Responsibility involves being answerable to whomever assumes authority assumes responsibility. Next is discipline. Discipline is common effort of all workers. And the other one is, fourth one is unity of command. Employees should have only one boss. Next is unity of direction. A single plan of action to guide the organization is the unity of direction. And sixth one is subordination. Subordination includes individual interest to general interest of organization. And the seventh one is remuneration. It is an equitable, uniform payment system that motivates and contributes to success. And the eighth one is centralization. Centralization is the degree to which authority rests at the top of the organization. And the ninth one is scalar chain. Chain-like authority scale is the scalar chain. And the tenth one is order. Order is the arrangement of employees where they will be of the foremost value to the organization. And 11th one is equity. Equity is justice and fair dealing. And the 12th one is stability. Stability of tenure of personnel. And 13th one is initiative, followed by 8th because, which is the harmony, general good feeling among employees. So the management function is essential for all organized activities and at all levels of the organization from the managing director down to a supervisor responsible for a small section within the factory, while the managing director has full executive control and authority for conducting the affairs of the company. Supervisor has similar powers on a smaller scale. Next is fashion cycle. So what is fashion cycle? If we really want to understand the term fashion cycle, then before that we should understand the term fashion trend. So the question is, what is fashion trend? A fashion trend occurs when a particular item or silhouette or color or other any look rises in popularity. So many factors can influence a trend or fad, including iconic celebrities, outfits, fashion merchandising firms, designer shows, and textile manufacturers. Fashion trends are still cyclical, going through a five-stage cycle that starts with introducing the trend and ends with obsolescence. Once a trend reaches peak popularity, it will begin to decline in popularity until it is considered outdated and unfashionable, eventually entering the end stage of the cycle where it is rejected by the fashion industry and consumers. However, due to the cyclical nature of fashion, the rejected trend may eventually re-enter the cycle after obsolescence. So, the fashion cycle is a natural cycle by which a fashion trend is introduced, rises to mainstream popularity, declines, and finally gets rejected in the obsolescence stage. So, here we can see the breakdown of five stages in a standard fashion cycle. The first one is the introduction. The introduction stage is when the new style first enters the fashion world. This introduction can be part of new haute couture design during fashion week, an outfit worn by a well-known figure, or a calculated effort from the market agency or manufacturer. The style is usually only available in small quantities from a handful of different designers or retailers, often at a high price. And second is increase. So the increase stage is also known as fashion acceptance stage is when the new fashion style begins gaining momentum and traction in the fashion industry, officially receiving the covered trend label during the rise stage. More fashion leaders and trendsetters wear fashion outfits during that, which is incorporated having an idea from social media influencers to celebrities, increase consumer demand. In response to this acceptance by fashion influencers, more retail stores will begin carrying the trend. And the next stage is peak. In the peak stage, the trend has reached full saturation in the general public, and many everyday consumers began wearing the trend. Most retailers will have identified and replicated the trend, and it will be available through mass production at a wide variety of price bands, especially at lower prices. And the fourth stage is decline. In the decline stage, the trend will become out-saturated or oversaturated in the market. During the period of this time, the trend's intense popularity will begin to turn off customers who want their outfits to feel fashion forward and unique rather than mainstream. And then comes the obsolescence stage, which is the fifth stage. So once this trend has reached the end of the fashion cycle, it is considered outdated and out of fashion by mainstream fashion wearers who have moved on to the newer trends in the introduction or increase stages. Reaching obsolescence doesn't mean a rejected trend will never return in the cycle. The cycle is in a constant trend of repetition, bringing back old fashion seen to them through the movement of the fashion. For example, the life cycle of jeans, waistlines, high-waisted jeans saw peaks in popularity during the 1940s, the late 1970s and early 1980s and 2010, while low-waisted jeans were peaked in between these years in 1960s and late 1990s to the early 2000s. Next, we will see about the phases of fashion cycle. Broadly speaking, fashion cycle consists of three phases: planning, designing, and product development, selling and production and delivery. The length of each phase varies widely by company. So a phase can be as short as 12 weeks or as long as 30. The planning, design, and development phase is typically the longest and has the widest variability among companies which exhibit. Therefore, that's where the greatest potential for compressing this calendar lies. So, what is selling? In a selling transaction, a retailer agrees to buy goods from a manufacturer or distributor at a discounted price. For the manufacturer or distributor, a selling occurs when the retailer agrees to buy the good. The term is built based on the concept that the supplier is selling the goods in the retailer's store. There is sell in and sell out. Selling refers to the sales from manufacturers to distributors, whereas sell out is the sales from these retailers to the end consumers. For example, someone walks into a Best Buy to purchase a product. It is an example of sell out. Coming back, regarding the phases of fashion cycle, the time span varies from brand to brand. The length of the end-to-end fashion cycle depends on a number of factors, including the company's business model and the retailer requirements for the assortment. For example, vertically integrated players such as H&M and Zara can make decisions faster and keep the selling price because they operate on their own stores. Even within a brand, different product groups might follow different calendars. For example, women's tops are typically refreshed more frequently than women's jeans, for instance. Basic items such as plain t-shirt, white t-shirt does not have to follow a seasonal collection rhythm because sales of such items are fairly consistent and easier to predict. Still, some basic retailers like Uniqlo, for one, are constantly finding ways to shorten their fashion cycle. Next is speeding up each phase. To shorten time to market, the first step is to define a viable target length for the full fashion cycle, taking into account the company's business model, retailer requirements for the assortment, and benchmarks for competitors, especially those that have successfully shortened their own calendars. Once the target length is reached or the full cycle has been set, the next step is to eliminate the time wasting activities and accelerate processes in each phase. Planning, design, and product development. In this phase, first the finance team sets financial target for the collection, while the creative team for each division such as women, men, and children determine the creative direction of the season's collection. What narrates or themes will be the collection embody, what will be the overall look and feel, what fabrics and colors palette will be in feature. The creative team also develop a master plan specifying the breadth and depth of their respective collections, along with price ranges. An example, the spring 2019 men's collection will have 12 styles of pants, for each showed casual khakis and dress pants, all in the different price ranges. Next is central merchandising team. At some apparel companies, the finance and creative teams work separately, with each team unaware of what the other is doing. This often results in inefficiencies and reworks. Leading edge companies have instead established a central merchandising team composed of staff from both the financial and creative sides of the business. This team collaborates on the collective direction or the creative direction, the financial targets, and the master plan. They agree on parameters early in the fashion cycle. This collaboration can cut out unnecessary iterations and shave up to 5 weeks of the initial phase. So the central team typically reviews sales data from the previous year, which can yield valuable customer insights and form the basis of sensible business constraints. Advanced analytical tools and techniques can help increase the reliability of forecasts by isolating the factors that drove sales down to the SKU level. So it will be including, did a particular shirt sell well because of its color, cut, logo design? What was it especially popular in a certain city or neighborhood or with any specific type of consumer? The most forward-looking companies analyze additional types of public available data such as online searches, social media, competitors' websites, and online product ratings. These analyses not only unearth nascent trends but also one of receding trends. So some fashion companies have even begun experimenting with natural language processing and visual processing, although these technologies can't yet really translate texts or images. For example, from tweets or Instagram posts by influencers into a clear, actionable insight. Generating consumer insights is one thing, instilling a culture of insight driven decision making is quite another. It represents a major change, particularly for fashion companies which tend to see their business as creative rather than data driven. The most successful companies are those that strike a balance between art and science. They invest in advanced analytics systems and tools, and just as important, they ensure that there are translators and connectors within the organization. People who are data savvy through thoroughly understand the company's business processes and have credibility among all internal decision makers to bridge the gap between analysis and designer. Armed with data and insights, the company then produces the first prototypes of the new collection. It is already found that this process can be compressed by up to 3 weeks in the companies opt to create mostly digital prototypes rather than physical ones. Next phase of fashion cycle is selling. So in selling, sales of goods to retailers or prior public through retailing process will be done. So here, digital prototypes instead of actual samples will be produced. Digital prototypes are 3D images on a screen, can be shortened the sell-in phase as well by lessening the need for producing and shipping physical samples. With digital prototyping, fashion companies can showcase collections to smaller retailers remotely. Those customers can then place their orders without having to travel to a showroom at all. For larger customers or consumers, fashion companies can create a few physical samples but show most of the collection via customized digital showrooms. Initially, buyers may balk at being shown digital prototypes instead of being able to touch, feel, and try on every item in the collection. But we have found that buyers come to appreciate the fact that 3D design allows them to give more input into the design process. Their suggestions can be incorporated into the design right away. Many more colors, cuts, and styles can be tested and prototyped. Digital prototyping is fast and scalable. Using body scans of human models, 3D technology can show sizing, fit, and how the garment would look on a person. So it becomes even more attractive as the technology improves and rendering becomes more detailed and truer to the life. Next is production and delivery. So in production and delivery, opportunities for the shortening production and delivery phases are fewer but still meaningful. One lever is disciplined management. Leading fashion companies have so tightly integrated their manufacturing partners into their business that manufacturers take responsibility for a wide variety of tasks and approvals. In some cases, manufacturers bypass several signs off from the head office, thereby cutting as many as 10 days from the production process. In other cases, fashion companies have placed specific tasks such as quality control on site at the factories, eliminating the need to ship samples and products back and forth between factory floor and design studio or cooperated office. As for capacity planning and booking, the earlier and more detailed the better. At many companies, designing teams for various divisions each have their own schedule process for informing vendors of their needs for fabrics, materials, and factory capacity. By contrast, at best practice companies, a central supply chain planning team consolidates order from across the divisions, much as a central merchandising team helps shorten the planning and product development phase, and a central supply chain team helps compress the production phase. So these teams can approach vendors with a single view of what the company needs and as early 6 months in advance of production. And the leveler for shortening the production phase is standardized vendor. The management tools and interfaces currently fashion companies use a mishmash of legacy systems, making vendors management cumbersome. A lack of standardization results in wasted time and rework. Each system asks for different inputs in different formats, so the inputs are often incomplete or inaccurate. Companies that have moved towards a single intuitive product life cycle management tool can that one that can accommodate sketches, photos, or comparable products, many types of product information on fabric, fit, color, and so on. These can tremendous benefits. So what actually required is that traditional fashion companies must be willing to not just make cosmetic changes to their calendar, but also thoroughly examine each of their activities and processes. They must also be willing to effect a change in mindset across the organization. In doing so, they could give the fast fashion companies a run, maybe even a spirit for their money. Now we will see how to use the fashion cycle in the designing process. For aspiring fashion designers, the fashion cycle can be a huge help or a huge distraction. Here are a few ways to use our knowledge of the fashion cycle to improve our design process. First is we have to focus on need fulfillment instead of trends. Spending too much time and creative energy trying to identify the next trend can lead to burnout. Fashion moves quickly. In some cases, a particular fashion style can rise and decline in less than a couple of years. Instead of worrying about trends, think about filling needs. For instance, if oversized clothes are on trend, there may be an unmet demand for comfortable, slim fit coats. Similarly, think about your own fashion needs and how you can use your designs to appeal them. Being authentic to yourself is your designs will result in fashion lines that you love rather than one solely influenced by trends. Next is remember the change is natural. One of your designs may become a huge trend, but it will begin to decline once it reaches its lifespan. So, till it reaches its declining stage, it will be present in the peak stage and it will eventually get rejected as a natural part of its lifestyle. When your design enters obsolescence, it's important to remember that this stage of life cycle occurs with all trends, not just yours. Change is ever occurring in the fashion process, and you and your design will continue to grow and shift throughout your career. And next one is follow your intuition. When a particular style starts to become outdated, you may want to remove it from your fashion line, but that might not be necessary if you created a unique fill out or design that is entering obsolescence, considering making it as a mainstay in your life, rather than removing it to chase the next trend. As a designer, it's important to follow your intuition rather than the trends of the resolving fashion cycle. If your aim is to create a timeless garment that consumers adore, with this, we'll end the session for now and we'll continue with some other topic in the next session. Thank you all.